In today's video, I try to survive 1 year in realistic Minecraft. In this 1 year, I'm gonna have to survive 4 seasons: spring, the heat of summer, fall, and the absolute harshness of winter. All while trying to figure out the new mechanics in order to make simple items, as well as watching my food and making sure it doesn't rot. And I would even have to worry about all of the predators that saw me as a big snack. And just so you have to understand the absolute difficulty of this challenge, I would even have to take a bath from time to time. At least there's whiskey. This is 1 year in realistic Minecraft. I would begin my adventure in the springtime, and I immediately began looking around so I could find some loose rocks and loose sticks, because in realistic Minecraft, you can't break down trees with your hands. And after walking around for a little bit, I began picking up rocks, and I picked up these rocks so I could then bash them together so that I can carve out myself some tools. So okay, and then I do that to make my first stone axe. I would also make a knife as well, and then I began chopping down the tree, and while I chopped down this tree, I have a confession for you. The only reason I was actually able to figure all of this out was because I did an earlier attempt where I spent an hour trying to figure out how to do the basic things. So I'm a little more advanced this time around. And so after chopping down the tree and collecting its wood, I went out hunting where I would kill a few goats. Then my goat hunting made me extremely thirsty, so I looked for a low point in the river nearby to go and drink some water. However, this ended up not going as planned. Whoa. God. Hi. Hi, pal. I'm just stopping by. You know me. Why do you look like you want to hurt me? Just drinking. Where'd you go? Oh, he is trying to get to me. It's not for me. Alright, above. I can't reach you. Why do you make cow noises? Ow. Ooh, 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 my bad, I'm sorry. For some reason, I decided I was going to attack one of the most dangerous wildlife animals out in the real world. And so now that I was at 1 heart, I decided now would be a good time to leave. I began exploring again, looking for a shelter, and that is when I came across a small little cave which I would use for the night. Here I would craft a knife, and then stacking thatch, sticks, and a log, I was then able to create my first campfire. Yes. It would be here where I would cook the goat meat I had obtained. After that, I then ventured off into the night, where I would then come across a dire wolf pack, and not wanting to be a midnight snack, I decided now would be a good time to run away, and so I booked it for my life. And after getting away from them, my running days weren't quite over yet, as I immediately ran into a saber-tooth who almost took my head off, and after I noticed them, I ran for my life, and I barely got away. I ran for the entire night, and when the sun finally came up, I found a nice patch of land, and this is where I actually decided that I wanted to call home. Using my knife, I began to cut grass so I could get thatch, and then using that thatch, I would then create thatch blocks. And although thatch isn't the most durable resource, it is the most common one I can get my hands on, and so I used all of the thatch blocks to create a tent. And don't worry, I upgrade my house later on. After completing my campsite, I decided to go adventuring again, and this is where I actually came across wheat, and I actually figured out that you can actually eat this stuff. I can eat wheat? That's insane. Yeah, wheat's actually kind of goated. Oh my god. Now the real reason why I was out here was because I'm actually looking for clay, as clay is actually a really important resource that I'm going to need if I want to advance. And after traveling for a little bit, I managed to find a patch of clay, and I would immediately begin digging this up, and after I dug it up, I headed back home. Once home, I then used that clay to begin carving out certain molds. With these molds, you can craft many tools such as pickaxes, axes, swords, and spears, and you can also create other items that will help you out in your journey in advancing. I also created some other items as well, such as a vessel, which will help me in my journey of creating copper armor. I created a vessel, which will allow me to store food, and it will allow it to rot at less of a time. I also created a jug, which will allow me to carry water around so I don't have to always be by a river if I want to drink something. And so then after putting thatch and logs into the hole, I would then set this on fire, and now all I had to do was wait about 10 minutes until the stuff hardened. And then once it is fired, I will be able to use it to its fullest advantage. And while we waited on that, I ran off into the distance, go and kill multiple horses. I also obtained a cow carcass while doing this, and then I killed some more horses as well. After killing all of the horses, I was extremely thirsty and extremely hungry, and so I drank from a nearby river, which absolutely screwed me over, giving me poison and nausea. This just proves why I need purified water more than anything right now. I then stumbled back home, and it was here where I would create a campfire so I could cook all of the raw horse meat that I now had. While this was going on, my clay had finally fired, and so I began gathering this and putting it straight to work, using my large vessel to begin storing so many things. And after that, I then went over to the campfire to eat a horse meat when something really weird happened. Whoa! I gained a heart. That's great. I now also began using my ceramic jug to its purpose, filling it with water and then drinking it. This would now allow me to carry water anywhere I wanted to and always have some kind of fresh water on me. However, this was also very dangerous, as even though this was fresh water, it could still damage me, giving me exhaustion, poisoning, anything. It still came with the consequences that came from drinking with a normal river. I just had it in my pocket now. After cooking all of my horse meat, I then put it into the large vessel, where it was here where I'd find out that meat I put into this large vessel would double the time it would take to expire. And so I put all of the large meat that I didn't need into the large vessel so I could come back to it later on. I then went over to the cow carcass, where I would then carve its leather off of it and then carve it more for some beef, which I would then cook into my campfire. I then tried to find the recipe for a sifter, as this would help me get copper items. However, I didn't have enough clay, and so I began looking around to go and find some clay patches, and this is where I came across multiple different kinds of wildlife that were going to try to kill me, but thankfully, I stayed clear of all of them. Hi, Mr. Snake. Eventually, I did manage to find my patch of clay, and after gathering it all up, I headed back home. But then I got distracted, and I came across a juvenile wolf. I saw the wolf on my way back home, and I went back home to obtain the bones so I could go and give the bones to the wolf. However, this actually doesn't work. Can I tame you? You like meat? It's a juvenile. He's all by himself. Oh, that's so sad, bud. Want to be my friend? At the time, I couldn't figure out how to tame the wolf, so I decided to push the sleeping wolf all the way back to my home. Man, you're not gonna. If you hurt me, I swear I'm gonna be so mad. I ended up pushing around the dog quite a lot until it actually woke up, and thankfully the dog did not attack me because I had fed it earlier, which meant it was now familiar with my human being. And when I realized that I could pull out meat and the wolf would then follow me, I then tricked it to taking it back home. Look at him go, he's so cute. He's so young too. I then took the dog back home, and with the dog back, I then literally spent almost the entire night playing around with the wolf. Now, I actually did a little bit of research to see if there was any way I could turn this wolf into my dog, but after looking into things, I couldn't find a single thing on how to tame a wolf, and all I could work with was the familiarity bar that the wolf had, and so, using that knowledge, every time I got the chance, I would feed this dog, and this, you'll see later, will actually end up paying out. And I'm not gonna lie, me and this dog ended up getting off the wrong foot pretty early. Well, it wouldn't hurt to... What else can I make? Did you just howl? Don't do that again. Oh my god. Oh, I can't know. So now it's time to get back on track. I then used the clay to create a pan, and with this pan, I will then be able to sift through gravel while in water, and this will allow me to get copper dust, which I can later turn into my first copper axe. However, this is a really grueling process. Once I have all of the copper powder that I need, I have to put it into a vessel, and then I put the vessel with the copper powder into it into one of the fire pits. After the fire pit is done, I have to quickly take the liquid copper and put it into the molds where I want the copper to go, and this will allow me to create copper tools. And I actually ended up screwing up the liquid process on my first try. Are you serious? But don't worry, I ended up fixing this mistake and making up for it later on. I ended up creating a lot more liquid copper than I needed, and so I created a copper axe head, a prospector pickaxe head, and a pickaxe head. And these 3 items would be very crucial for me later on. And the entire time I was doing this really long process, me and the wolf, which I named Freddy, had gotten along really well together, and I kept feeding him and kept having him by my side. Oh. Okay, you're just gonna steal my pork. Alright. Little swim boy, aren't you? Stop doing that. I am not playing this mod pack with you at like midnight, okay? Because if you make that sound while I'm making that midnight, bro, I'm gonna have like a heart attack. I'm just gonna die. Getting back on track, I finally had finished creating copper tools, and I also created a copper saw, which I was going to need in order to create wood, and that process is also, for some reason, super long. To get any kind of wood, you need to get a log and then turn it into a chopping block. Once you turn it into a chopping block, you then can take other logs into the chopping block, and then using your axe, you can turn them into beams, and then using your saw, those beams become planks, which then you can use to create plank blocks. And now you can finally use a crafting table. Yo, this is insane. Oh my god. Oh, finally. Now I wanted to expand my storage system, so in the morning while I was chopping trees down, I actually came across a weird looking rock. That's just a block I can get. Bet. Native gold. And then later on, I used that wood to create 7 barrels, which now expanded my storage system significantly. Oh my god. We have storage. My next task was trying to get mud bricks, and I was also really happy now. I had amassed a 80 familiarity with Freddy, meaning that he was almost at 100 and so close to being my permanent friend. I also had plenty of food, and things were looking well until things didn't end up going well. We're chilling on a whole bunch of things. You need to stop howling now. Please. It is going to attract wolves, and I really don't want to deal with other wolves, because then I have to attack you. I don't want to attack you. You're my best friend. No. Oh, no. No, please don't do this. No. Freddy, listen. No, Freddy, no. I had accidentally hit Freddy, and because of this, I was devastated, and Freddy didn't want anything to do with me anymore. No, don't run. I don't want to fight you. I chase him. Listen, forgive me. No, stop, Freddy, no. It was an accident. No, 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 no. Freddy, no. Let me chase him back to my house. Freddy. I'm so sorry. Because I managed to lure Freddy back to napping over around my base, I now went off to go and collect some mud so I could create mud bricks, but because Freddy absolutely destroyed me, this process took a lot longer than it should have. But after I finally got all of the mud I needed, I went and checked on my food supply, and then I finally began placing out mud bricks, and the reason why I decided to make mud bricks was because it was a solid building source and probably one of the most common blocks I could get at the time. And I was also reminded why I need to focus on trying to get purified water. Great. Uh-oh. I really need clean water. Soon, actually. And literally nothing happened until the nighttime where I tried to redeem myself with Freddy, and I was completely unsuccessful. Our friendship. The relationship between us was too good to be true. Oh man, I'm so sad now. And to help myself cope with the fact that I probably wasn't going to be friends with Freddy anymore, I decided to gather myself some more clay. And I also planned to create more mud bricks as well, as I wanted the base of my house to be mud bricks. And apparently, separation is good for relationships, as that morning, Freddy seemed to have gotten better with me and decided he wanted to be my friend again. Do you forgive me? Wait. Oh, let's go! Freddy, I know, I'm sorry, man. I'm so happy you want to be my friend still. Thank you, I love you. You're amazing, Freddy. You're the best. You're the best. You're literally the best. Oh my god. That night, I'd also decided that I wanted my home to be made out of wood, and so while I was doing that and setting it up and creating it, I then went over to Freddy, and something crazy happened. There you go. Male dog. You're a dog now. Oh my gosh. You my dog? Oh. My friend. Oh my god, Freddy, you're my dog now. Oh my gosh, really? That's right, Freddy was now my dog, and after confirming that he was actually my dog and that he would actually be around me, I began working on the home a little bit more, and after working on the home a little bit more, I decided that I needed a bit more food, and so I went out hunting where I killed a little bit of some animals and obtained some more meat for myself and Freddy. And then when I got back that night, I cooked all of my meat into the campfire. And then that morning, while I was suffering from drinking bad water, I gave Freddy a piece of meat, and then I gained a Best Friends Forever achievement. Best Friends Forever? This allowed me to gain pet commands, and so now I could actually tell Freddy what to do. I could tell him to relax, where his home was, to follow me, to hunt with me. I now could do a lot with Freddy, and he was now officially my dog. Oh my god! I then finished cooking my food and then went off to go and look for Douglas fir trees and then chopped it down and began working on my house. And I have to tell you, this process, just working on the one house, takes forever. I spent most of my spring just working on this dang house. And that's just because in realistic Minecraft, resources like wood literally take forever to get. And when I finally managed to add off the finishing touches to my house, and when I was completed, dog, I was actually so happy to have that done. And I actually felt really safe and secure in my own home. And I even added some little details to it to make it just perfect. Alright. I've done it. I've done my jobs for the day, I guess. How about we have a tornado bunker? We have safe and secure. Good looking home. I mean, on the outside, I think it looks a bit better than on the inside. But I'm sure that can change in the future. In the morning, I began sifting for copper powder, and at the time, I thought this was getting a little too slow. And actually, I'm still playing while recording this, and trust me, this river isn't done being used, but at the time I decided that I wanted to go mining, and so I took my prospector pickaxe and began searching distant caves, and I swear I couldn't find a single ore, bro. It just didn't come up. I wasn't getting anything, and it took me so long until I finally found the new ore that I could possibly use to make armor, weapons, everything I could possibly need was this ore, bro. And I was overjoyed to have finally found an ore that I can use to my advantage. So I set up my support beams to prevent possible cave-ins, I killed a zombie, and then I began mining out the bismuth. And this didn't stop a couple of cave-ins. Trust me, there were a lot of cave-ins from time to time. But I eventually got just enough bismuth that I needed that I began heading out. And once I finally managed to get to the surface, I headed back home with all of my ores where I would begin the ore obtaining process. Now, for some reason, obtaining ores is ridiculously hard. For starters, you need running water. Then, after you get running water, you're going to place down your sluice. And after crushing your ores with a hammer, you throw the rocky chunks into the water, where it will then clean itself out. Now, we have clean rocky chunks of bismuth, which means we have more to do. Now, while our dirty chunks clean, we need to get some copper. And then, once we get the copper powder, we then put it and create a copper chisel. Now, we need to get raw diorite, so we go out and do that. And after obtaining raw diorite, we then use the copper chisel to get smooth diorite. Using the smooth diorite, we are now able to create a kind of crusher, which takes the combination of a quern and a handstone. Then you put the handstone on top of the quern, and then you take your chunks of bismuth, put it into the handstone, spin the handstone, and then boom, you have bismuth dust. And now we're about a third of the way completed. So after you do this little process for literal hours, and after all of your chunks of bismuth are turned to dust, there's some more for you to do. You once again put the dust into the sluice, and now you have bismuth powder. You see, now we're about halfway there. Now we need to make the furnace of realistic Minecraft, which is a forge. But before I go and created the charcoal forge, I was getting really hungry, and a giant pack of dire wolves were near my base, and because I didn't want them to sneak up and kill me one day, I decided to fight them, and this was a terrible idea. I think we wait until they fall asleep, and we attack. We attack at night. So since I'm editing this video, I can tell you how stupid this idea was, because direwolves are actually like tanks. They hit really freaking hard, so if I got touched by a direwolf once, I would be killed immediately. But despite that, I decided to carry on with my plan. Run. Oh no. Oh, we just done screwed up. Freddy, run. Run, Freddy. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, are they running back? Oh, they're going back. Okay. This is when I learned that direwolves and wolves are actually very similar. They both have a home area, so every time the direwolves would chase me, they eventually would figure that it was worth going back to their base and then just falling right asleep. They would only do this during daytime, and so knowing this, I decided to take advantage of this, and I would run to the direwolves, throw a spear, and then attack them, and then run for my life. Oh, not again. Oh, that's so many wolves, bro. Oh my god, do I just run them out? Okay, some are going back. I think these ones are chasing me. Oh no. Eventually, though, this would lead to them getting dangerously close to my home, as they knew that I was a threat, and unlike normal Minecraft mobs, these dogs actually have feelings and actually are smart, so they'll know whether or not to attack me. Boy. Oh nah, they waiting outside. They the ops. From here, from the safety of my home, using the trapdoors as my windows, I fought the direwolves, throwing my spear out my window into the crowd of direwolves, praying that I would hit them, and then they would come closer to my home, where I would then continue to stab them with my spear. However, there was a flaw in my plan. When I threw the spear out the window, I would just lose the spear, and my stone knife was not reaching them, which meant that if I got close to them, they would just kill me immediately. So I needed to craft multiple spears so I could throw it at the direwolves and then use the other spear for range to attack them up front. And I made multiple spearheads and then crafted a bunch of spears just to be able to take out these direwolves because they had a lot of health. And when I would attack them, they would run towards me, but if they had low health, they decided they didn't want anything to do with me. Meaning that once they healed up again, they would come back and kill me another day. So I couldn't leave any survivors. Oh, I got one! I then got to a point where all of the direwolves were at low health and just didn't want to come near me, so I had to throw my spear at them in order to kill them from a long range. This also meant I had to craft multiple spears in order to do this, and this whole time, I was thinking about all of the meat that I was about to obtain from this. And after killing one of the final direwolf puppies that were here, I then went outside with Freddy to go and investigate the area, and that is when we realized that we hadn't killed all of the direwolves. Oh, holy, stay back. Stay back. Help me, Freddy! No, it's trying to run away. Oh, we got it. Good work, Freddy. Oh, Freddy. Yo, eat. Eat this up, bro. Eat. Oh my god. Oh, Freddy's good. Dude, one touch from the wolf. Nah, Freddy's cooked. And after going and picking up all my spears and realizing direwolves don't drop any meat, I also checked that it was now summertime, which meant I get thirsty a whole lot quicker, so I knew I was going to need purified water. So I went over to the charcoal bit that I initially planned for the charcoal forge and collected the charcoal. After collecting the charcoal, I made barrels so I could store my purified water. Once after I was done with that, I went over to the crusher with my charcoal and I crushed it to create charcoal powder. And this is important because you then put it into the pot, and then once you boil the pot, this will then turn normal water into purified water. And once I had this going for me, I would then take the purified water and put it into barrels so I could store it for whenever I needed it. And so now it's time to get back on track with my ores. After creating another charcoal pit, I went out and got raw diorite. I got 4 raw diorite, and then once my charcoal was ready, I then created a charcoal forge. Then I took all of my bismuth powder and turned it into bismuth pellets. And once I had these bismuth pellets, I then put them into the charcoal forge, where they would then forge and went into my ingot molds, and this would allow me to get ores. And this actually allowed me to get quite a few ingots, and after getting all of the ingots I needed, I decided that I was actually going to need to take a second trip, because the first trip was so good, I might as well take a second one so I had all of the resources that I was going to need. And so then after going on my really long trip and nearly dying multiple times, I then had all the bismuth I needed and headed back home. Long story short, I eventually was able to get all of that bismuth into bismuth pellets, and I began turning them all into ingots. 13 ingots. Alright, let's see. Give me... And once I was finally done with all of my ingots, it is now time to begin forging. For starters, you're going to want to make a primitive anvil, and then after that you're going to want to heat up your ores so you can weld them together. I then would weld 2 ingots together to create a double ingot, and this would actually allow me to start focusing on armor. But I wanted to make sure I had all of the double ingots that I was going to need so I could make a full set of armor almost immediately. And this, after completing everything, is when I ran into trouble. Using my double bismuth ingots, I was going to create an anvil. However, This is when I realized I had made a terrible mistake. Okay. Isn't that... Bismuth. Why is this blue? Why is this green? Oh no, have I just gotten scammed? I just got scammed. Oh, I just wasted all my time on an ore that doesn't even matter. Oh, bro. Are you for real? This is bismuth bronze. This isn't bismuth. This is what it... Oh. The only reason why I wasn't screaming my head off at the time was because it was midnight and I had just realized that I had done all that for literally nothing. I had created bismuth and I needed bismuth bronze, which meant I would have to have done a whole different process to get what I actually needed. And because when I actually went mining and I just couldn't find copper and instead I found this, found nothing except this. What the actual hell is that thing, bro? Look how big it is. I guess I gotta get past it. I don't know how that thing spawned, bro, but that thing is definitely a good, cool light source. How is it able to sustain itself to live? Defeated, I decided that the only way I was going to possibly get copper was by using the copper pan, because I had spent so much time looking for copper in the first place, and the only place I had managed to get copper was because of the freaking river. So I literally spent the early bit of my summer and midsummer just simmering through gravel. That is literally all I did. I did this for literal weeks. I had been doing this for so long that by the time I had enough to just create some copper ingots to finally make my copper anvil, it was late summer. After making my anvil, I decided to take the time to learn how the anvil worked. And this is when you finally get introduced to forging, and forging is something that's a truly difficult process. So in order to create copper anything, you need to put it through the anvil, and then you use the hammer and flux using the little green and red buttons. Red makes the buttons go to the left, and green make the buttons go to the right. Now you need those two little thingies right there to match up perfectly, and then you finally get your copper item. However, if you do this multiple times, you're going to get a poorly forged item. But if you do it limited amount of times, you could get a perfectly forged item. And the difference is based on the durability and how efficient they actually are. Oh my god, I'm insane. Oh, look at me go. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about, baby. Perfectly forged fishing hook. Oh yeah, did you see that? Perfectly forged. I'm insane. So you might also be wondering why I chose to make fishing hooks as my first few copper items. And this is because that there's actually a big river just really close to my house. So after making a fishing rod, I decided that now was a good time to head on over to the fishing pond. And it was here where I learned how to fish. What? Oh my god, I caught a fish! Yo! Oh my god. Salmon. Ugh. Come here. Oh. Oh. I found the fishing process in realistic Minecraft to be a lot of fun, and once I was finally done fishing, I had plenty of fish to last me a good amount of time, so I headed back home. The next day, I had decided what I wanted my next plan of action to be. I wanted to create more copper tools and items, but I also wanted to start working on my backpack, and this process for the backpack was one that was going to take me a long time. For starters, I got a wooden hook and then began breaking leaves so I could get silkworms. After I got the silkworms, I would then use those silkworms to infest a nearby tree, and this would later on give me silk. While I waited for those leaves to infest, I then worked on a copper javelin head so I could make a javelin that did a lot more damage than the stone ones. I also created a new copper saw as my old one was damaged and was going to break soon, and after that I then worked on a loom which I was going to need if I wanted to turn my silk into silk wool cloth, which I would then need to work on the backpack. My next step was to get beeswax, but in order to get beeswax, I was going to need some bees, so I needed to work on a beehive. After collecting some string, I would make some bee frames, and then I would use the frames to create a hive. I then placed a hive out in the middle of my house somewhere, and then I would surround it with flowers. And yes, the bees took forever to get here, so we're going to do something while we wait for them. First thing on my list was to create the silk cloth, which I would put string into the loom and then click it, and then I get silk cloth. I need this for my backpack. After getting all of the silk cloth I now needed to work on getting leather, and leather is actually really difficult to obtain. For starters, I'm going to need salt water, so I went to an ocean to collect all of the water I thought I was going to need. Then I took medium hide that I had in my storage and put it into lime water, and once it turned into medium soak hide, I needed to scrap it with a knife. I struggled with this at first, but once I figured it out, I got into the hang of it. After that, I then obtained a bunch of logs, and then I took the logs, put them into water, and then I was going to create tannin so I could continue my leather making process. While we wait on that, I heated up some copper ingots after creating them and then threw them into an anvil, and I wanted to create copper blades so I could turn them into copper shears. The reason I did this was because in long term, I was going to need to make insulated armor so I could stay warm during the winter, and shears was the only way I was going to be able to do that. And when I finally finished, my hide had fully soaked into the tannin. Now that I had medium tannin hide, there was just a little bit more of some stuff I needed to do until I could finally turn it into leather. My next step was to go and find some tree seeds, so then I could turn them into tree seed powder, and then turn that into tree seed oil, and I was going to need this, so then I put the tannin leather into it, and then it becomes oiled hide. However, there were a couple of problems. For starters, I needed bone meal, and secondly, I needed beeswax, and the bees haven't arrived yet, meaning it was going to take me more time to finally get my hands on beeswax and then finally be able to create leather. And so while I waited on glue being made from the bone meal that I had put into lime water from earlier, I then needed to create glass. So then with this glass, I was going to create tanks, and then these tanks would later go onto my backpack, and these tanks will hold water or any kind of liquid I want to carry around with me. And for some reason, after creating a bed, I decided to make a stupid straw hat, which just looks really funny on my character. Clothes head. Oh my god. Yo, Freddy, when you wake up, bro, I've got drip. Y'all like my drip? It was 2 a.m. I thought anything was funny at this point. So summer was slowly ending and fall was going to be coming soon, and I currently had no way to keep myself warm. So I started looking at ways to warm myself up, and that's when I came across insulated leather, which is better than silk armor, and so I decided that was what I was going to focus on. Although I didn't have leather at the time because I was still waiting for the bees, I could still collect the straw that was going to be required in order for me to make this armor, and so that is what I did. And so for the rest of my summer, which was for like 3 weeks left, I decided I was going to focus on creating copper armor. So I was in the river for a little bit, creating copper powder, and then going to the anvil after creating ingots, and then getting double sheets. It's just look, this is what I was doing for the entire summer. And I created just enough copper armor to fully satisfy my needs. Yeah, I created a full set, because I had nothing else to do, and the bees weren't coming. Where are the bees? And I eventually finally made copper armor, and I was finally now wearing it. And trust me when I say this armor had probably saved my life. You're not going to see it yet, but this armor literally saved my life so many times. This stuff was goated, okay? And I am truly grateful that I was able to have this. I did it. I have copper armor now. Oh my god, look at the back. To celebrate, I decided to create an armor stand, and I'd actually end up putting my copper armor on here, as I figured I wasn't going to need it yet. But this is actually a really stupid move, as I could get jumped at any time, and I would likely need this armor on me at all times. And thankfully, I decided I was going to start wearing the armor, as I got into a tussle with a saber-tooth that night, barely escaping his jaws by ducking underwater. I would kill the saber-tooth, however, after that kill, I began to get really cocky, and so I went out and ended up hunting down 2 other saber-tooths, and I decided to fight them, which was a really bad move. My mic wasn't recording at the time, but I was panicking. I was underwater and blind, and I couldn't see the surface, and when I went up to the surface to breathe, this saber-tooth fell asleep in the water, which allowed me to escape just in time to be able to get out of there. I mean, in reality, if this was real, I would have been so dead. And you would think I learned my lesson, but after killing one of those saber-tooths, I attacked the other one and danced with death once again, barely escaping and then killing the saber-tooth for its meat. Looking back at this, I have no idea how I survived. I should be so dead, bro. My legs and my body obviously hate me at this point, bro. When I came home, I finally had the bees that I've been waiting so long to get. And this would allow me to create a mixing bowl, and this would allow me to finalize my steps in creating the leather backpack by putting tanned hide into the mixing bowl and then turning it into leather. After it becomes leather, I then have to scrape it with my knife and then take my shears and officially turn it into leather bits. And with these leather bits and all of the pieces, I was finally able to make this backpack. And so I celebrated my victory over creating the backpack, and then I took a step back and realized all of the animals I had actually killed to create just one backpack, and I decided I didn't want their deaths to go to waste, and so I looked at other armors I could create, and one of that was leather, as which you can eventually turn into insulated leather, which would keep me nice and warm, and so I worked on creating an entire set of leather. However, I got bored and moved on to go hunting. And the reason why I went to this hunting place is because I realized that those tigers I had killed earlier, their meat was actually extremely useful and really delicious, and it kind of was something really beneficial to have. And so I went hunting for saber-tooths, which is by far probably one of the most riskiest things I had ever done. However, I was extremely successful in most of my hunts. I also killed a rabbit and a stray donkey that were nearby before heading back home. And that next morning, I would then cook all of my meat. After having all of my food cooked, I decided to go on a grand adventure, taking Freddy along with me to go on and explore the land. And immediately, things didn't go well, as I was looking to see on Freddy's progress, I fell down a hole and broke some of my legs. This wasn't a good start, as my unfortune would continue on just a little bit later. And after I healed up a little bit, I decided to continue on my trip and not head back home. On my trip, I actually ended up killing a pig before continuing on even more. I would also run into my first environmental problem, as traveling with Freddy was kind of steady at this point. I then came across a river. Now, the difference between me and Freddy is my swimming skills are perfect, while Freddy's aren't the greatest, and he had needed a little bit of encouragement to jump into the river in the first place. After getting into the river, he was struggling to fight against the current, and so he needed me to push him and encourage him to get over and across the river. This made river crossing a true pain in our adventure, totally. As I continued trudging through the forest, I came across a small hut with a villager inside, and after entering and seeing what the villager had to offer, I continued on my journey, trudging through the forest to see if I could find anything of use. I then entered a new section of land, as I could tell because the stone changed from diorite to granite. Here I saw a couple of other types of animals and learned what they were. Eventually though, I reached the peak of my adventure. After gathering some more rye, I continued on my adventure where I came across a villager who was living by a cliffside. I went to talk to the villager, and it turned out that this villager was selling diamonds for granite gravel, and it just so happened that this man was surrounded by the stuff. So I abused this and obtained a ton of diamonds for myself. I did though realize that crafting diamond tools was not possible, and after trading a ton of diamonds with the man already, I tried to find some things to create diamonds with, and that's when I saw that I could create a diamond backpack. The reason why I wanted to do this was not only did it increase the space of my backpack, but it also added protection to it. So not only would I have the protection of my copper armor, but I would also have the protection from the backpack as well. Okay, this does nothing, but it looks cool, so... I didn't yet realize the backpack's abilities yet, and with my new backpack, I continued searching for better resources. I was now officially into the month of September, and when I came across this giant hippo, I remembered that this thing hurts a lot, so I decided to sneak past it and went for the wolves that were nearby instead. However, those wolves were fast asleep, so I wasn't worried about them attacking me. I then found a small pebble of an ore nearby, and after doing some quick research, it said that I could smelt this down into cast iron, and this got my hopes up a lot, and I would later find out that cast iron is kind of useless. I would continue my adventure for a few more days until finally deciding to go back home. And this is also when I realized about the backpack's abilities. While I was cooking all of the meat I'd obtained from my adventure with Freddy, I began thinking, how could I preserve meat more? You see, while I run by myself, I run hunger quicker, and I wanted to find a way to not use as much meat, as on my adventure with Freddy, I actually ran out of meat in the first place and was relying on the wheat I had found on the ground. I couldn't have that happening again, because what if I didn't come across any more wheat? I could possibly starve to death, and the best way I thought I could do this was by getting a horse. But before enacting on that idea, I for starters created a full set of insulated leather, which is what was going to keep me warm because temperatures were dropping, and this was going to prevent me from freezing to death. After having an entire set, I then went out back into the wilderness to go hunting, and this is when I came across a bison. I decided to fight the bison head on, and then as soon as I made this decision, the bison then charged me. Oh my. We're just gonna sit here for a minute, away from this scared bison. Oh my god. I then limped all the way back home and decided I wasn't going to be fighting any bison in the near future. Once I had recovered from my injuries, I decided to continue my plan to get a horse, and so using the remaining leather that I had, I created a saddle. After creating the saddle, I then destroyed the old tent that I had and used all of the resources from it to create a small shelter where I was going to put my horse. After that, me and Freddy traveled all the way to an old plains area where we had remembered horses from our original adventure. The two of us then headed on over there, where we came across our first victims, which were the horses. Now, finding the horse wasn't the most difficult part. I ended up selecting this fully white horse to be mine, as I figured it ended up being one of the faster ones, and so I decided to keep it. However, taming a horse was a whole lot more different in a realistic Minecraft than normal Minecraft. You can't just sit on a normal horse in realistic Minecraft and expect it to like you. Instead, you have to feed it every single day until it's like, yeah, you know what, you can own me now. So I sat by this horse for multiple days, feeding it constantly, until eventually it got to just enough familiarity where it would let me ride it again. And I took the horse all the way back home and put it in its little bit of shelter. Little did I know, this horse just doesn't like me, and quite frankly, would disagree with me throughout the year regardless of what we were doing. That night, I decided to boil some more water, and then it began to rain, meaning that the storms were going to increase. Then after the rain stopped, my river started to freeze over, and it was only the 17th of September, which is early autumn, and it's already cold enough for ice to begin forming. This meant to me that winter was going to be ridiculously cold. I then decided the next morning that it was time I take the white horse out for a spin. I didn't really have a name for him, so we're just going to call him White Lightning for now. I then took White Lightning with me and we traveled the lands, going through and breezing through any obstacle that came our way. Eventually, though, I went far north and I came across a giant forest where the most unexpected thing would happen to me. And I still... Oh, it's not done. Okay. Let's get through the blizzard then, my friend. This snowstorm. Oh my god. Oh. After getting White Lightning through the blizzard and making it back home, I was quite in shock. I mean, a blizzard in September? That means that the place I live in is going to get ridiculously cold, ridiculously fast, and I needed a way to keep not only my house warm, but myself warm as well. And so I made plans to create a chimney. I then acted on this by creating a base that was going to be made of diorite cobble. When I tried to make the walls diorite cobble as well, I then realized that wasn't going to be possible because the blocks would move and fall, and so I needed a different block to create the walls of my chimney. Luckily for me, I thought of the raw diorite, and so I went off to go and get multiple bits of it, and I would use that to create my chimney. After completing my chimney, I went back down to cut some more Douglas fir trees down, using the wood from the Douglas fir trees to create an extended area where this was going to be, if I was cold, I would go here to either cook my food or warm myself up. Of course, though, I had to add some final touches to it just so it could be finally completed. So then some other things I did is I went hunting with the White Lightning to go and obtain some more meat. After that, I then went to exploring once again and ran across a tornado, and I ran for my life right after I spotted it because I did not want to die. And then after that, I went adventuring with Freddy, and things would go terribly wrong for me once again. It's a little windy. Ready? Oh, shoot. Freddy, go. Oh, no. Oh, Freddy. Come on, Freddy. I gotta go back. Oh, God. Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. Oh, heck no. Oh, no. No. Oh, my Lord. Oh, here comes a blizzard. A blizzard. Oh, okay. I wasn't expecting a blizzard in, what is it? Early fall? It's early autumn. Oh, where's Freddy? I can't even see him in this. Oh, the rock. Freddy! Where are you, bud? Freddy? Freddy? Oh, there you are. Hey, bud. Listen, we're in the blizzard now. We gotta bolt to back home before this gets worse. You ready? Alright, bud. Let's go! Go, go, go! Run! Run! Oh my god, it's so bad. Oh my god, it's so bad. Please, 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 please.
Screen.travelersbackpack.item use mouse cursor or narrator off.
Oh, oh no. Please no, not like this. Pretty careful. Dude, okay. This isn't good. Shoot. The shovel? I do. Alright, ready. So things were not going very well. I fell down a hole not paying attention and nearly broke every bone in my body, and Freddy had come down to check on me, which I guess was the only good thing. I now had to use my barely working arm to dig myself a staircase out of the freaking hole while not freezing to death. After some difficult time in doing this, however, the blizzard would eventually stop and I would manage to make it out of the hole and barely limp myself back home, thinking that I need to pay attention to where I'm walking more often. The next morning, I was blocked into my house due to another blizzard. With the blizzard raging on outside, I decided to just chill inside and stay warm and not go outside and cause myself to freeze to death. So now I wanted to find a way to create a food source that would last multiple months. And so I tried to do this by creating bread by putting flour into water, and I was going to let that sit so it turned into flour, and I was going to use that to make bread. But instead of making bread, I ended up making whiskey. I heard the burp, burp, burp. I didn't like whiskey. After now having whiskey in my possession, I made plans to go out and collect crops lying on the ground because it lasts longer than meat does, and that was my plan to go and do next. However, the next day, another blizzard hit my house, and I realized that the snow that the blizzard produces actually breaks items that are laid out on the floor. So I decided to act on this by collecting all of the items that were on the floor and also just organizing my house overall. This way, not only am I keeping storage in check, but I'm also not losing any items to the snow. So then, after the entire storage system was set up, I then went off with White Lightning to go out into the wilderness. However, this time, I forgot about my plan to keep an eye out for plants that grow on the ground to harvest, and instead I focused on hunting for meat, which was not what I should be doing. I should be looking for plants. However, I did get a good amount of food, so I'm not complaining. And that night, I did a little bit of inventory for how my meat situation was. Okay, actually I think it's good, but currently, I don't have to even worry about the venison. The only thing, or the cooked beef. The next day, I actually became sick of dealing with all of the dust and clouds that were in my house that had built up from me just living here, so I decided to do something about it by breaking down my walls so the dust would flow out of my house. I then worked on making some fresh water. However, the barrel where I stored all of my purified water and the logs that I placed near the boiling pot of water was actually caught on fire, and all of the water and all of the things I'd worked so hard to put there were all destroyed. The next morning, I looked up into the sky to see clouds moving super fast, and because I was curious, I decided to go investigate it, and that is when I eventually realized that that was a tornado coming for me. Oh, it's right there. I then ran all the way back home and noticed as the tornado got closer and closer, and eventually the winds began pulling me in, meaning this tornado could actually hit my house. You wouldn't do that to me. The minute I start getting pulled in, I'm running into the house. Please don't come this way. Please. Please, tornado. I beg you. I beg you. Do not come this direction. It's getting bigger. That's getting bigger. Oh, it's turning. I think the wind, though. Oh, no. Oh, it's coming. Freddy, what are you doing? Freddy. No, get away from there. Freddy. I then cowered away in the basement with Freddy, even trying to bring White Lightning in here, but he ran off, and I guess he wanted to die. I then checked outside to see if the tornado had gotten any closer, and when I looked, it had switched directions, and it had missed my house, deeming my house safe. However, this was the closest the tornado has gotten to me, and I was kind of scared that later in the future one might come and wipe out my entire home. However, I had more things to think about before I could worry about natural causes. So after the tornado passed, I was able to create some purified water, and then I began asking the question, how could I travel faster and better, all while having a chance of not dying? And after doing a bit of research, I figured I could create a paraglider. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There has to be it. We have a glider. What's this do? After creating that, I went on a solo adventure, going hunting and killing any animals for food along the way, all while testing the paraglider to its limits, and I'm not gonna lie, this thing was a ton of fun to have. As I traveled further north, I eventually came across a fully snowed over land, making me think that this was what winter was going to look like for me. Isn't this insane? You can't, yeah, see, look, that's a saber tooth. They don't really spawn anywhere else, but my damn place. Oh my god, I'm literally in the Arctic, bro. What's the weather? -13. I would then continue exploring the snowy tundra, coming across some very interesting things along the way. Look, I guess blocks with... Chat. This is uranium. Uranium? Isn't this bad? Would this f***ing kill me? Well, gang, we now have uranium. Okay, oh, I'm gonna add this. Nukes. There we go. New location added. So I found uranium? I mean, that's kind of insane. So if I ever need nuclear power stuff, I just know where to find it now. But anyways, I decided to carry the uranium on me. And if you know anything about it, you know that's not a good idea. So I don't think anything happens, but I don't know what I was thinking. On my way back home, I found out about a new mechanic. As I was walking around, I got slowed down and these dirty little particles were forming around me. And I think the game was saying that I was stinky, and I took a bath and it cleaned itself up and all of my problems were solved. This is when I learned that hygiene was an actual problem in the game. Alright, and so then after that, I finally got back home and cooked all of the meat that I had obtained from my trip. Now, I think the video is getting kind of long, so we're going to do a lightning round of a few things that happened next. After that, I then ran across a tornado, and this tornado looked really fun to ride, and since I saw twisters the morning before, I rode the tornado and jumped inside of it and swung around multiple circles, and when I was free, I glided all the way back home. The next thing that I did was take Freddy on another adventure. Together we traveled into the snowy tundra, hunting animals while we were here, and I don't think anything interesting really happened while we were doing this. We then had another massive blizzard come through that lasted a few days, and in those few days I spent it chopping down trees for firewood and whatever else I wanted the wood for, and I also got chased by a pack of dire wolves. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that is not good. After escaping the angry wolves, I then looked around for more food that I could possibly scavenge that wasn't meat and that would actually last a very long time, and this was when I came across some garlic. Garlic is really good to have because it lasts a few months. I also discovered that using a knife on rye, wheat, or whatever, it turns it into grain, and grain actually lasts multiple months, meaning the more rye and wheat I had, the more grain I would have, giving me food that would last me for a really long time. Then, after chopping down a few trees and planting a Christmas tree with Freddy, I came up with the idea of building a barn, because if I had a barn full of animals, then I wouldn't need to go hunting, especially when winter hit, and this would leave all of the animals near me, providing me with a meat food source, which I was desperately going to need. And so I got to work on my project. Beginning this project, I wanted this barn to be huge and big enough to fit at least 4 different types of animals, and this actually costed me a lot of wood and resulted in me being at the anvil quite a lot. Also chopping down trees and placing wood planks even when blizzards would come through. And because this project was taking a long time, I needed more food, and so I decided to confront the bison. Smoked that one. Now he goes back to sleep, see? Look. Let me run back. Don't go back to sleep. I then saw the massive amount of food lying on the floor and decided I wanted more, and so I decided I was going to fight more of the bison, throwing my spears at them from a distance, and when they would charge the direction of when the spears were thrown, I would dodge out of the way, grab my spear, and throw it at them again, eventually killing another bison, before finally heading home and getting back to my work. I would run out of wood working on the roof of the barn, and so when I headed out to go and find more Douglas fir trees, I then realized that my screen had begun changing color. Ow, what the? Yo. You see, I took off my insulated leather armor because it was fall and the armor durability was low. But now, winter had finally arrived, and I was currently freezing to my death. And if I didn't go home soon, I would die of hypothermia.
Almost home. I'm almost home. Don't do this to me yet. It's snowing. No. Please. What the hell? Huh? Why is there thunder? What the heck?
Luckily, I managed to get back home and used the meat that I had stored to restore my health. And then I warmed myself up and I realized more and more that it was finally wintertime, and now things were going to be serious. For one, the storm increase is insane in the wintertime. I would have my first forming tornado be nearby, and this also led to my first hailfall. This made working on the barn slightly more difficult. While working on the barn and doing all of the things needed to complete construction, I would also have to worry about storms. On top of all of this, I was also going to have to worry about freezing to death, and I even had to make another set of insulated leather armor. At this point, I'd actually finished the barn. However, tornado formations would happen almost every single day, and I was rushing Freddy and White Lightning into this basement quite a lot. And after coming to a realization that I wasn't going to need to take tornado formation seriously anymore, I began to get more things done. I would do things like getting the dust out of my house, or put White Lightning in his own pen, and even add a storage system to the barn, and even begin tilling the ground near the barnyard, all while taking a bath. But after my bath, actually, I saw a large snake, and I threw a snowball at it, which made it very angry.
Oh. Me. Freddy, please wake up.
I then made it my personal goal to kill this giant snake, even though it's kind of my fault that it wanted to attack me now. But this thing literally wouldn't die. It was beefy for some reason. I was doing Navy SEAL stuff, and this thing had the audacity to keep living, but eventually I would finally kill it. However, the event of killing that snake took so long that the last of my bison meat had finally rotten up. So I went looking for the last one that was in that little flock that I had killed all those days ago, and I killed him for his food. Now with the bison meat, I was able to finally get back to work on the farmland, finally finishing it up, and on December 26, I had the barn and everything finally completed, only missing the animals.
Oh no, we missed Christmas. No. Look, Freddy, come here. This is Christmas tree. Merry late Christmas. Yeah, I guess you living with me is kind of the payment I deserve. So, yeah. Merry Christmas, buddy. It's nice to have you on your license.
That night, I decided to get some beeswax just in case the bees are ever taken from me, and then in the morning, I decided I was going to begin a strip mine just so I could obtain some more stone and create structures that weren't grabbed by tornadoes, but I was very rudely interrupted soon after.
Oh. That's a tornado. Holy crap. It's a small one. Ready.
That tornado ended up not coming over my house, so I decided to ride the tornado once again. After playing around for the entire day, I went back to the strip mine that I had worked on, and I absolutely have no idea why I decided to do this. It ended up just being a total pain and a complete waste of time. Which is why after my last cave-in, I decided to cover back up the hole that I had dug. After filling up the hole, I used all of the rocks from the strip mine I went on to actually take out all of the dust that was in my basement, because the dust had covered up pretty much the entire floor, and I was tired of coming down there and worrying about being blinded. So I worked on all of the dust and got it out of not only my basement, but also out of my house as well. After obtaining a clean house, I decided to reinforce my basement by replacing the gravel with cobblestone, making my basement feel more safe. After finishing up the walls of the basement and finishing up the floor, I decided to go out hunting, where I killed some more bison, not only for the massive amount of meat that these guys give, but I also used their hides to create leather, so this way I could have a backup winter insulation set just in case mine currently breaks. After figuring out that I could actually create torches and placing them and lighting them around my house, I began doing some research in what farm animals I wanted to add to the barn. After doing some research, I created a sign with the list of animals I wanted to include in the barn. And so I went off to go and obtain the first animal on my list, which were ducks, because ducks quite frankly spawn a lot near I was. After obtaining one duck, I took this one duck all the way back to my barn, put him in a pen, and then when I went outside, I saw a giant tornado off in the distance. Not thinking much of it, I went to sleep, and then the next morning, something insane happened. I was admiring the tornado that had now gone off into the distance, and when I looked around, I noticed there wasn't just one tornado, but multiple. Oh, whoa.
We got one there. Okay. One there. And another one there. Oh, guys. Oh. Please. It's a big one, too. That's another one for me. Is that coming towards me? Oh, that's a third tornado.
That's right, I had 1, 2, and 3 tornadoes all spawn in my general vicinity. Thankfully, the third tornado disappeared and the other 2 were gone, but the fact that there were 3 tornadoes near me really just scares the brown brick out of me. But to replace the disappeared tornado, I had another forming tornado storm spawn in again. I couldn't catch a break.
One threatening to form right there.
After everything was finally peaceful, I went and got myself a drake. I then brought the drake over to the other duck, and the 2 of them would be put into a pen together so the 2 could get along. Then, after getting the 2 ducks, I also went after 2 goats, and so I put those 2 in a pen as well. This began the task of going out and feeding the animals every morning. I would feed the ducks, and then I would feed the goats. I then went out that exact same day to go and get some cows, and once I had the cows here, I was feeding them all the time as well. Everything was going very great for me. And this is because I would discover that I was not only able to milk goats, but I was also able to milk cows as well. And I learned that milk actually has an insane benefit to it. Yo, what? So now not only did I have animals that could later be turned into farm animals and help me have a sustainable meat source, but I also had animals that would produce me milk and liquid, which not only helps with my thirst, but it also heals me as well, making this 10 times better than whiskey. As whiskey gives me haste, which allows me to break objects faster, which has been helpful for destroying trees and all of that, but milk freaking regens my health, and that takes so long to do. I then felt like all of my animals had friends and a significant partner in their lives, but for Freddy, he just had me, and so I decided that I was going to give Freddy a friend, and when I went over to the wolf pack, I tried to see if I could feed them or anything that would help build their familiarity with me and would hopefully not want them to kill me. However, they weren't interested in my food, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to get Freddy a friend. I then went back home, took a bath, and fed the animals, and from here on out, I didn't really have anything I needed to do to survive, and there weren't many things I could try to do to find new items, as I was now limited due to the storms and the winter. So, from a daily perspective, I would get up, go and feed the animals, and then observe the storms passing on by, or doing whatever else I could do to just fill some time. Then, the day that changed everything. I was just doing my normal day tasks, feeding the animals, going around, when I noticed a storm off in the distance, and this seemed pretty similar to all of the storms that passed through here, and I've had tornadoes be close, but blow away, but when I looked at this more and more, it felt like it was getting bigger and bigger and closer, and I knew that things were going to get crazy when it started pulling me in.
Oh no, it's pulling me in. It's pulling me in. It's coming here.
I knew the tornado was coming. I grabbed my bed and forced myself down into the basement, making sure Freddy was down here too. Knowing that this tornado was big enough to absolutely destroy my house, I had no other choice but to put Freddy in the basement and pray that it didn't come here. I put Freddy into the corner of the basement, just the absolute furthest way from the doors, just in case the tornado came through and ripped him out of there. I did not want that to happen. After making sure that Freddy was in a secured area, I went up to go and take one more look. I went outside to go and test the winds, and the wind immediately began pushing me towards the tornado. Knowing that this tornado was probably going to hit my house, I tried to get a good look at the place, just to see if it was going to hit me or not, because I've had tornadoes be close, but barely miss my home. But as I sat here and thought and saw the tornado, I began to realize it was tearing my house apart. I would barely escape the tornado's grasps and make it into the basement. I would push Freddy into the absolute corner of this basement while the tornado's wind covered the sound of my voice. I couldn't hear a single thing, only the roars of the tornado, and I could only stand there, helpless, to watch my house get slowly torn apart by the strength of the tornado's winds. I truly thought that this was it for me. I was huddled with Freddy, saying my goodbyes to him just in case, as I listened to the tornado rip my house apart. I thought that there was a chance that the entire basement was going to collapse on me, killing me and Freddy in an instant. I even thought that there was a chance that the tornado would rip me out of the basement, as the blocks in the basement were being torn outside of it. I was in this basement for a really long time, almost the entire night. I would even have a weird moment where quiet would settle over the entire land, making me think for a second that I was dead. When the sound came back, one of my torches fell from its original placements, indicating the structure of my house was gone. I risked grabbing the torch because it was very expensive to make, while huddling with Freddy for the rest of the night, just waiting patiently for the tornado to finally pass and for hell to finally end. I mustered the courage to look out of my basement as the tornado had finally passed over my home, and all that was left of it was the skeleton, the logs I had placed all those days ago. I sat here in silence with shock, disbelief, and sadness, and I went over to relay the news to Freddy.
It's all gone. Freddy, just stay here. Just stay here. It's all gone. It's all gone. It's all gone. God. My barn might be okay, actually. I don't know how the cow got out, though. I'll tell you to sit one last time. No, the barn. The barn was it. No. Open my door.
whole skeleton of my house. Not really knowing what else to do right now, I collected all of the items I could on the floor and stored them in the chestnut chest nearby. As the sun had finally begun to rise, I looked off into the distance to watch the tornado that took everything from me finally go away, bringing an end to my doomsday. The first thing I would do was survey the damage of the barn. Let's get these guys back in pens. Took a couple of fences. This is the most expensive part. You guys are familiar with me. I wonder if I can get you all in one pen. I decided my first action was going to be getting all of the animals into pens again. Thankfully, one of my pens was just a-okay, and so I could put them all in this one pen and it would be fine for now until I make sure the barn is completely safe and completely fixed. But that is going to take some time. But before getting to work on that, I decided to check up on my house and just survey the entire damage of it. I'm actually devastated. Let's check the damage took my entire home. Kept this, kept that. That's good. And kept that. The entire structure, the whole base of the house is completely gone. Every bit of it is gone. Well, at least the bunker somewhat stood up. The stairs did start going though. So it was time to get back to reconstruction. I decided the first thing I was going to do was use every single resource available to work on restructuring the barn together. So I decided to take all of the planks that I had in my chest, as well as all of the Douglas logs, and turned it all into Douglas planks that I was going to focus on using for the barn. I planned to do my house later, but right now the barn was my #1 priority. And so this is actually what was the project I was going to be doing for pretty much the rest of winter, was going to be working on the barn and my house. I spent basically all of the rest of winter chopping down trees, turning those very logs into the posts, and then turning those posts into planks, which I would then use to create the blocks to then finally reconstruct the barn. This took me almost an entire week to just do the barn alone, as it took a ton of blocks, and therefore it took a ton of trips to actually do. But despite all of the work that I was going to have to do to focus on reconstructing my entire house, I had finally managed to complete the barn, and finally could sigh a sigh of relief. It was then finally time for me to begin working on my house, as I was completely tired of sleeping not only out in the open, but also in the basement, where there was dust and also a lot of dog poop. Working on my house, like working on the barn, was actually more difficult than working on the barn, because all of the Douglas fir trees that have been growing around my house had all been chopped down to be used for the barn, and quite frankly my copper axe had finally broken when I was working on the barn and chopping down trees, so I decided to make 2 copper axes so I could have enough just to get me through the rest of the winter. And because there would be absolutely 0 Douglas fir trees near my house, because I used them all for the barn, I would have to go out and find Douglas fir trees out in the wild and chop down those trees instead. But they were quite frankly really big, so it did kind of work out. And with everything I was given, I was able to breathe through recreating my house. My only real problem was the figuring out of where everything went, and that made the building a little bit awkward and a little bit different than it originally was. but I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal since all I needed right now was the protection. I would also take the opportunity to clean my house of all of its dust before finishing off the second floor and then finishing off the house. I then needed to replace the shears that I'd lost from the tornado, as I needed to recreate the insulated leather armor as my second set had broken, and so I needed to make another one to keep myself warm. And after all of that tragedy, finally things were back to normal, and so I went to my finally completed barn and decided to put the animals back into the correct pens. Now it was truly time for me to cruise through the rest of winter, starting every day off with feeding the animals. Some small things I would do was I actually ended up rearranging my barrels so they could look sideways, which is something I didn't know you could do.
What?
I also got blizzards, like a lot, but despite all of the blizzards, it didn't prevent me from doing small things, like moving my uranium right next to my bed. I don't think this was a good idea. And creating a chair so I could sit next to the fireplace. As well as taking Freddy with me to the barn, because I figured he needed to stretch his legs a little bit. I also created a new pen for my ducks, and I tried to rekindle my relationship with the White Lightning. However, he didn't seem interested in it.
This guy, I'm not gonna lie. White Lightning.
Like, we might kill a White Lightning for food if we have to. Don't tell him I said that. I finally figured out that the ducks actually needed a nest to lay eggs, and so I added a nest to their pen. Also, towards winter's end, there were so many blizzards that my house was beginning to be snowed in. On another note, though, there was finally the baby goat that was born.
Look at that baby goat.
I also got snowed in so much more, increasing my boredom, so I decided I was going to try to remove snow even though it was still snowing. On the final week of February, my milk buckets had finally begun to fill and the eggs were finally laid. On the final day of winter, my house was so snowed in that it made it very dark inside, and the one torch was the only thing lighting my home. It also made it very difficult for me to leave the house. I then took Freddy with me to the barn for one last time for the year, where we came across the baby duck that had finally hatched.
Baby duck. Yo. Look at the, dang, that's a big duck, bro. Look how big it is.
I would also name all of the baby animals that were finally born, and I went over to look at my house as the blizzard finally stopped. And because it finally stopped snowing, I decided to clear up some of the snow that was surrounding my house. However, there was so much that I wouldn't really finish any of it by the end of the day.
God. Oh my god.
And finally, I went to sleep, waking up on the first day of spring, completing my 1 year in realistic Minecraft.
Yeah. Oh, we did it. It's over. Alright, here you go. Oh.
Just like that, I survived 1 year in realistic Minecraft, going through the good times to the hard times. I truly had the experience of a lifetime, setting up the perfect foundation for more years to come. However, that is up to you. If you want to see year 2, be sure to like and subscribe, and if this video does well, then we'll do a year 2. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.